Hi friends, it's Alexa and I'm back for the second recap video that I'm doing for the books that I read this year. This time I will be focusing on the books that I read in March and April because I didn't read as many as I normally do. In March, my parents were here for a visit. They stayed for almost 3 weeks. And then in April, I had some of my friends come and visit as well. They were here for almost 2 weeks. So basically, it was a busy time and I barely read anything, so I decided to combine them into one recap video. If you're interested in seeing what I read in February, I posted that video already and I will link to it down below. I'm also going to be doing one for the books I read in May, which is coming up at the end of the week. And if you're wondering how I remembered everything, book bullet journal has all my notes, has everything that I need to remember about the books that I'm going to be talking about. These are all the books that I read in April and March. Well, most of the books that I read. Some of them are not going to be on here because I don't own them or they're not physical copies. The first book that I finished in March was Spindle Fire by Lexa Hillier, and this is her take on Sleeping Beauty. Though it's about two sisters, Aurora and her half-sister Isabel. Instead of centering around a prince who has to wake up a sleeping princess, it centers around Isabel's journey to find a way to wake up her sister from this sleep that has fallen over the kingdom. The potential for the story was really there. Like, I really thought that would be interesting to have that kind of sort of sister relationship be the main focus of the story. And for the most part, that was really what drew me into it, what helped me continue reading it. The ending was like weird, and then the writing was just not my cup of tea because the pacing was a little off, the build-up was weird, and like the actual story itself and the way it was executed was just not something that I particularly felt connected to or that I liked, so that made it kind of not so great. The next book that I read was actually our pick for the first quarterly Flights of Fantasy book club that I run with Rachel of Hello Chelly in tandem with our Flights of Fantasy reading challenge, and that book was Written in Red by Anne Bishop, and I've owned this book for a very long time, but it was only this year that I finally got a chance to read it. And I have to say that it was really, really, really good. Basically, it is about Meg, and she is running away from the people who used to control her, and she finds her refuge in a small little town where people are called the Others live, and that means they're shapeshifters, so they shapeshift into wolves and all of that. It's just this interesting thing where there's this girl who's trying to make a life for herself when she's never had to before, and this whole little group of people who are so unused to others who are not like them being so open and so kind to them. And it's just them getting used to each other basically in the first book, and so obviously her past catches up with her. The prejudice against the others is also a big factor in this, and it's just very interesting. I don't know, I just think that Anne Bishop did a great job with a limited setting and a very simple storyline. She really drew me in, and I think it was because she succeeded in writing characters that felt so real and so important. Meg is my favorite character, but I also love Sam, and I also love Simon, and Mary Lee and Montgomery, and I'm just like, there's so many good characters in this book, and I cannot wait to continue the rest of the series. I haven't had time yet, but I definitely plan on doing so. The next book I read was a review book, and that was Fireworks by Katie Cotugno, and this is the story of two best friends who both get picked to be in a making the band type situation, and so they spend a summer in Orlando like training and practicing and meeting the other people. And it was cute. It was the fluffiest Katie Cotugno book I've ever read, I think. Yeah, of her three, this is the fluffiest. And I like the idea of it because I'm a sucker for boy bands and girl bands and the 90s and Orlando, and I think like it was enjoyable to see those aspects of it. It was also interesting to see, like, again, the complex relationships. It wasn't the romance that was complex this time though, it was a friendship, which I thought was interesting. And the hard part for me was I didn't like the friend that the main character was trying so hard to stay friends with. The main character's name is Dana and her friend is Olivia. Yeah, so I didn't really like Olivia, and Dana herself, it took me a while to warm up to her, so I think that's why I didn't love this one as much as I love Katie Cotugno's other books. Still, it was enjoyable. I would say it would be a really good summer read, actually, because it's a really quick one. The next book I read was also a review book, and it's called The Wonder of Us, and it's by Kim Culbertson. And this one is about two best friends who have been long distance for a year, I think, and then the one who lives in Europe invites her friend over to take a Europe trip. So Ria is the one who lives in Europe and Abby is the one who stayed behind. And it is on this trip that they discover that they've both changed a little bit and like things are very different for both of them now. and they're either going to find a way to fix their friendship or maybe realize that their friendship has really changed. And what I liked about this one is the exploration of friendship and how time and distance and you becoming a different person or things happening in your life can really affect who you are and what you like and what you don't like and your relationship with other people, and that was really interesting for me. And then setting it against the backdrop of all these European locales was really great too. I definitely thought that it could have used a touch more development, just a little bit. There's also a lot of drama in it, which could have been avoided, but I guess that's also gonna happen. And there's also a little bit of implausibility with the plot. But I did like this one. The next book I read is one that a lot of people have been telling me to read, and I read it for the Picky Pledge. And that book is The Fixer by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and this is the first in a 2-book series, although hopefully it will be more because I know a lot of people love it. It's very interesting because it's about a girl named Tess who moves to DC to live with her sister, and she finds herself embroiled in a sort of scandal going on in the political world. Especially because she goes to school where a lot of diplomats' kids and politicians' kids go to school. And she becomes a fixer like her sister. Yeah, fixer like her sister. And she basically handles the sort of scandals and secrets that come along for her classmates. And I really enjoyed it. It took a while for me to get into it because the beginning is a bit clunky to me and nothing much happens. But once like the mystery part picks up, I was just so engrossed in it. I had to know what was gonna happen. And I think that it was really exciting and really cool to see how it all played out in the end, and I'm very much looking forward to reading the sequel, The Long Game. The next book I read is one that I absolutely adored, and that is Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer. It's about a girl named Juliet who has lost her mother and writes letters that she leaves on her mother's gravestone. And one day she gets a response from someone, which she doesn't expect, and so this whole relationship with that person ensues. So it turns out this other person, although she doesn't know it, is a boy named Declan, who is not necessarily someone that she associates with in her day-to-day life. And so they go back and forth writing letters and developing a friendship and shenanigans again. And I actually really liked this one. I think it was such an interesting concept to have them write the letters back and forth and develop their relationship that way, but it was also interesting to see how they interacted in their day-to-day when they were more like enemies as opposed to friends, and that was really cute. I just thought it was a great combination of individual stories but also like this really cute budding friendship turned romance eventually. And there's just one aspect of the story that I didn't particularly love. I can't really get into what that is because it's slightly spoilery, but I will say it definitely affected my overall feelings about this story. The next book I read was for the Year of Recommended Reads, a project I do with my friend Lindsay of Bring My Books, and we read Sorcery and Cecilia, or The Enchanted Chocolate Pot. And it is a very cute historical slash fantasy story where there are two cousins, and it's told in a format where they're writing letters back and forth to each other about their experiences, and they both sort of get to dip their toes into this world of magic that they've only really heard about and never really experienced until now. And it's cute because it combines this whole magical aspect where there's someone going after someone else, but also the typical like things I would expect to see in historical fiction work, like the balls and like the outings and the letters and the suitors and the picnics, and it was just really adorable. It was a really quick read and I ended up really enjoying it. And then I read another review book, and it is I Believe in a Thing Called Love by Maureen Gu, and this is about a girl named Desi who she's basically very capable of handling pretty much anything. The only thing she's terrible at is romance. And so she decides to take a cue from the K-dramas her dad loves so much and comes up with this list of steps in order to get the attention and regard and get, eventually have a relationship with this guy she has a crush on. And the book follows all of the shenanigans that ensue. And yes, shenanigans is my favorite word now, apparently. But yeah, it's another very cute young adult rom-com type story. I enjoyed Desi a lot because I could relate to her. I could relate to her feelings, how she wanted to be in control of everything, how she felt very inadequate when it came to love and other things like that. And I thought it was so cute. Plus, all the K-drama references in the story were so much fun to read, and I definitely think that anyone who enjoys a K-drama will like this one. And then I read For the Picky Pledge, The Girl of Ink and Stars by Kieran Millwood Hargrave. And this is actually a really short book, but it's about a girl named Isabella. She is determined to find her friend after her friend disappears, and it just leads her on this insane adventure because her dad's a map maker and she follows her dad's map. And yeah, I feel like I'm not describing it very well, but it was very interesting. It had a very fairy tale feel to the way it was told. I also just really liked that she was so headstrong and determined to find her friend and to do right by her friend, and that the map played an important part in it. It was slightly confusing when I found out the main plot part, so yeah, that part threw me off, but otherwise I thought it was really good. The next book that I read was The Traitors Kissed by Erin Beatty, and this one actually took me a while. I know a lot of people are saying that this one has Mulan vibes to it, and it does to a certain extent, but it's like Mulan meets the Winners trilogy. That's how I feel it is. That's the vibe I get from it. It's about a girl named Sage Fowler who she doesn't want to be in an arranged marriage, so she ends up apprenticed to the matchmaker, and in this book she is traveling with the potential brides for the Concordium, which is this big gathering where a lot of matchmaking happens. And usually the matchmaking is for political alliances and stuff like that. So she's traveling with them, and they also have an escort of like from the king's army, I guess. And eventually Sage finds herself embroiled in this whole conspiracy where the escort, especially the captain, suspects that there's treachery going on, and she becomes a spy for them. And it is really good. It does take a while to pick up. It starts pretty slow, but once Sage is engaged as a spy and once she's starting to connect with the people from the escort, it just gets so good. I just really enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised by this one because I wasn't sure what to expect going into it. The next book I read was another cute YA rom-com type story, and it is Alex Approximately by Jen Bennett, and I really love the UK cover. I think it's gorgeous. Bailey is the main character, and she has just moved to her dad's side of the States. She lives now on the West Coast with him, and it just so happens that the town that her dad lives in is the same town that her online friend Alex lives in as well. And Bailey really wants to meet him, but she decides that she needs to prepare before that, so she wants to find him first. In her quest to find him, she also has other things going on, like a summer job where she meets her new friend Grace and this guy who aggravates her a lot named Porter. And yeah, shenanigans. Again, I'm just gonna say shenanigans. And this one was so cute. I really enjoyed the same aspect that the Letters to the Lost book has, which is like they have an online relationship, but then in real life it's gonna be completely different. I loved that this was also not just about that, but also about Bailey herself and like, you know, her own personal growth as a human being. I think that was really, really good. And as always, Jen Bennett's writing is just really addictive, really compulsively readable. And then I read Wing Jones by Catherine Weber. The US title is The Heartbeats of Wing Jones, and I also really like the UK edition because look at those pages. Anyway, it's about a girl named Wing, and when her brother gets into a drunk driving accident and actually kills someone, she's forced to deal with how she feels about him, how she feels about the situation, and how everyone else is reacting around her. And I really like this one because I love the family aspect best of all. Wing and her brother basically grow up with both their grandmothers and their mother, so it's a house full of women, which is sort of what my experience was. And I like that it was a bit quieter in terms of story and plot, and mostly had to do with how Wing was dealing with all her feelings. And I think that's something that is not always something I would gravitate towards, but I think that Catherine Weber did it very well in this book. I also enjoyed the slight magic that was tossed into the story. I think that was really fun and creative, and yeah, it was really enjoyable. And the last book that I read in April was What to Say Next by Julie Buxbaum, and it is about an unlikely friendship that springs up between a girl named Kit, who has just lost her father, and a boy named David, who is relatively isolated. And this unusual friendship slowly develops into something deeper and more meaningful over time. And I really enjoyed this one. It's surprisingly short, so I was a little worried about how it would develop, but I think that Buxbaum did a good job with it. She wrote these two characters that are very distinctive from one another, and also going through their own personal individual struggles and helping each other through those things. And I think like that's the part that really drew me in and that I really enjoyed in the end. There you have it, guys. Those are all the books that I read in March and April. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments or to reach out on Twitter or Instagram or anything. If you don't follow me on all those other social media sites, all the links are down below. So yeah, I will see you guys for the next recap, which is going to be the May one. Bye!